Cardamom Chai Podcast with Roma and Jasnoor. Hi everyone, I'm Roma.
And I'm Jasnoor. Thanks for joining us on this week's episode on marriage expectations versus reality. Roma, before we get into our topic, how was your week?
My week was good. It involved a lot of shopping, so it was amazing.
Yeah, that's always so good.
Like this time of the year, usually it's like there's Boxing Week going on and all these things. So yeah, we just had like a bunch of things to purchase for the house and for ourselves, all the necessary things, not just anything we want sort of thing, but just necessities. That's what you do as an adult. But yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, how was your week?
It was good. Also shopping. We did not go for the necessities as you did. We actually got a TV.
Oh,
so
nice.
we got a bigger TV for our living room. And we moved our old TV into our bedroom.
Oh.
So we can watch TV in bed.
Right.
I am loving it. So like my in-laws live with us, and having just one TV kind of limits you to not be able to watch anything that you want to watch, because they also want to watch TV, right?
Yeah.
And plus maturity content
Right.
in TV shows. I really don't want to be watching intimate scenes with my mother-in-law and father-in-law in the living room. We actually, like my husband and I, haven't been able to watch anything together for a good year now, just ever since they came here. So now, having the TV in our bedroom, we can actually watch whatever we want. So we've been watching Squid Game 2.
Oh,
It
there's a
was-
new season of it. Okay.
Yeah, it just came out, and we've been watching it, and we're now on episode 4, I think. Before, it would take us, before we got the new TV, it would take us like months to even get one episode watched, and we're already on episode 4, which is amazing progress.
So TV was a necessity, basically.
It was that's what I'm trying to get to.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, it's been good. I can't complain at all. So should we get into today's topic, Rama?
Yes, yeah, let's do it. So everyone, today's topic, as Jasnoor mentioned, is marriage expectations versus reality. While we were doing some research about this topic, we came across some stats on this website called thrivingcenterofsight.com. I'm gonna read a couple of stats that I read there, which said 2 in 5 people think that marriage is an outdated tradition. Around 73% of individuals feel that it's too expensive to get married in today's economy, and around 85% of individuals think that it is not even necessary to get married in order to have a fulfilled and committed relationship. So this made us think that this would be a good topic to discuss during our podcast. There is a list of common expectations that people normally have from marriages, ranging from emotional intimacy to affection and physical intimacy to shared values and goals, building a life together, creating a family together, right? But sometimes we tend to also create and carry some unrealistic expectations from marriage while we grow up. We pick it up either from society or from TV or the shows or the movies that we watch, etc. So let's dive into the topic. We will share and discuss. Again, this is our personal opinions. We are not by any means professionals or advisors. We are not at all setting any firm benchmarks either here. These are just some of our ideas that we have experienced, or we might have seen it in other people in our circle.
Yeah, thanks for introducing the topic here, Roma. Those percentages, I think they're so much more higher than I expected. Talking about expectations, 85% of individuals think that it's not necessary to get married. That's so much higher than I thought. I thought it would be like maybe like 50%, but 85, that's a lot of the population.
Right. And when I was reading at the bottom of the website, though, it said that the population that they picked was in US, I think, because the website also had all the cities and everything listed, which all sounded US. But we're just going based on this to sort of build our podcast and talk further about this topic.
Yeah, of course. Growing up, I had a lot of expectations, and a lot of the expectations I had, I didn't realize were unrealistic until I was married and living through that. Let's dive into the topic and really get into the nitty-gritty of the situation. So how we're going to tackle this is We're going to talk about some of the expectations that we had, that people usually have, maybe other people that we've noticed as well, have before getting married, and what the reality of the situation is in those specific categories. So let's kick it off with housework. I think this is the most argued about topic that I see today, especially with like the mental load of housework. So I see that topic discussed in today's media a lot more. So what were your expectations of housework before you got married?
So normally when we grow up, or at least when I was growing up, the expectation that was put in my head was that women normally do the housework and then men go out and, or work and get food, basically, as in like the hunter mentality and everything. That was the expectation, I guess, growing up, or that's sort of just what I thought would normally happen. But as I grew up, learning more things about cultures, and we also moved from India to Canada, so there was a whole culture shock there. And so based on that, I sort of started just creating my own expectation of probably gonna be too difficult for me to do everything. I probably won't. And so I started building my own expectation of like, okay, it has to be done 50-50, or at least I should get some sort of help. And then I also started seeing that in my parents, because when they also moved here, they both were working. And so my father, who normally wouldn't pitch in back in India, started helping my mom here a lot more because of the way life was here. So I started seeing that in my own household. It just, that's sort of what my expectation became. And after that, it was just so strong. By the time I got married, I was just so strong on this, that okay, it has to be done 50-50, or I should get some sort of help. And so it's normally like, okay, one person does the cooking part of things, whoever is good at. I'm not gonna say any gender roles here, because we'll touch upon it later in this podcast. But whoever is good at cooking does the cooking, and the other person does the cleaning afterwards, right? So just dishes and everything. And then when it comes to like the other chores of the house, right, like laundry and all these things, should also be done in a 50-50 way. And I was so calculated on that, in the sense that okay, one person does it this weekend and then the next person would do it the next weekend, and sort of things like that. That was a very calculated, analyzed, and into the box opinion and expectation I had before marriage. Once you get married, though, that expectation stays the same. Like it does happen, but what normally happens is it's not always 50-50. It could be like this person, like, okay, I'll do the laundry, and then the other person can fold all the clothes and put them away. Or if that person is busy this weekend, then I would do all of it this weekend, and then when I'm busy the next weekend or the weekend after, then he would do all those things. So it wasn't like a very calculated thing anymore after marriage. After marriage, it really calmed down into like, okay, whatever works for the two of us, that we will do. But it always stayed as both people pitch in to the housework. It will never be one person doing it, just because both people work, and like both of us are making money and everything. So that's why. A whole different story. I have a whole different opinion. If it's only one person working and the other person is not working, then obviously things could be different. But because in our world we all work as well, so has to be done 50-50, or both people pitch in, not 50-50, but both people pitch in, basically.
Yeah, no, that's along the lines of the same expectations I had, was like 50-50, no matter what the task is. Like, I'm not solely responsible for it. Like, we're both responsible for our household. And this is not just all on me or all on him. It is 50-50 completely down the line. And that no one ever feels like they're doing more.
Yeah.
That was my expectation going into a marriage. And that's the expectation that my husband agreed to as well. And he was like, yeah, I'm totally down with that. And yeah, that was a little bit unrealistic, because that's really not how things go. Because when are things ever so neat and clean, 50-50 divided?
Yeah, it's never. Not black and white.
No, it is not black and white. So, it's never just 50%. Someone is always doing more or doing less, depending on what is going on. What we figured out is we have a preference of what chores we like doing and what chores we do not like doing. So, for example, I don't like driving. I never drive. if we're going somewhere together, it's always him. I never drive.
Hmm.
He never likes doing the dishes. So he does not ever wash the dishes. I will always wash the dishes. With laundry, whenever someone sees it's full, they do the laundry. I never have to be like, oh, can you do the laundry? Or he doesn't have to be like, can you do the laundry? It's whoever sees it, it's full, needs it done, gets it done.
Yeah.
So we figured out a balance for us that works, where it doesn't feel like someone is doing more work. Whatever needs to be done, and whoever notices it gets it done. I know in like today's society, we always talk about the mental load. What do we need for groceries? Who is getting them, and what that's looking like, and what are we cooking? Things like that. That never was a problem. Just because we came up with the plan where like whenever things run out, we just put it on the list that's on the fridge. When we go shopping, and it might be my husband, it might be me, whoever goes shopping takes a picture of that list and gets those things. It's never felt like someone has a mental load of doing something, which is what I see a lot of women struggling with. They're organizing like, this is what we need to get, this is the exact same brand we need to buy for groceries, these are the exact same vegetables, the milk has run out, like this is what we need to get. They're planning the entire meals and everything. They're coming up with the menu, they're also cooking, they're also doing the dishes. But for us, it's never been like that. I think it's partly because I don't take it seriously. I don't take the mental load on myself. Whenever my husband's like, what's for dinner? What do you want to make? Or like, what are you feeling like? And then he'll tell me, and I was like, so we don't have this. And then he'll look in the fridge and be like, yeah, we don't have this, so we can't make that. So then decide together, like, we have this with this. And one of us cooks. Like, he likes cooking, and I tolerate cooking. We both cook on and off, and it works, because if the laundry isn't done on a specific day, I don't really care. Really not a big deal to me. I will do the laundry when I'm out of clothes. If he's out of clothes faster than I am, then he will do the laundry. And that's just, and if something is broken in the house, if something needs fixed, if he notices it, he fixes it. If I notice it, I fix it, because I don't take it on myself to do everything in the house. And he's the type of person, not like, I don't care what goes on in the house. He obviously does care a lot of what goes in the house, and that's where that comes along with, like, I don't want ultimate control, and he wants some control. I never have to worry about the fact that, oh, I am in charge of everything and he's in charge of nothing.
Right. And that makes sense, right? Like the last sentence you mentioned on, like, you don't want to take charge of everything, but then he's also interested in taking some charge. I think just based on what you mentioned, that's exactly how it is in my house as well. I like the kitchen and everything, but like, I don't want to be doing everything in it, right? So I don't really mind sharing that thing with my husband, and he is interested in taking some of that thing on him. That helps him feel like included in the house and everything as well. So I wonder if it's like a generational thing where guys are like more involved now than they were before.
It is. I think it is a generational thing in Indian men, because Indian men were not involved in the kitchen at all to begin with, none whatsoever. So I think that is a generation thing, but I think the mental load of carrying the house and everything in the house is done, that I don't think is a generation thing. That I think people are still struggling with, especially like in the Western society. The reason that most women do get divorced and do not want to get married is because a lot of these men do not want to take that mental load on, because they don't want to, or they don't have the capacity to, or they're just not interested in it, right? And a lot of women are struggling because of that, because they're like, well, it was okay to take their mental load on when they weren't in the workforce, but now they're in the workforce, and to be able to do your job, take care of kids, and run the household, that's 3 jobs. One person can't do 3 jobs.
3 full-time jobs.
Exactly. And while one person is just doing one full-time job, there has to be an equal split there.
A balance,
Exactly. And like, let's say like, you become a parent, and maybe one person is involved in running how the kids are raised and taking care of all of their needs, and the other person is doing the household work, right? They're in charge of running of the household, right? Maybe that's how the split works. But there has to be a balance that you're both happy with. Maybe one person does love like control and they want to be able to be like, yeah, this is exactly how I want things done, and I'm okay with taking that responsibility. And the other person is like, yeah, just tell me what to do and I will do it, as long as someone tells me what to do and I have a list of things. And if that works for you, that's great. And some people are just like that. But, clearly we both aren't.
Yeah, and as long as there is effort put in, right? Like, even if there's like, okay, the husband or the other, like, even if the wife, anything, like if they go like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it, it still shows effort in some way. But yes, with the whole mental load, it wouldn't be split that way, but still shows effort, like still shows that the husband is willing to help out and do the work, and there is no shame in it or anything like that, right? This one topic is more common that I think couples talk about or practice more now than ever before. The whole idea of housework and how that will be split and everything. I can't imagine 30-40 years ago even discussing this is like common sense to them at that time. We're like, no, the wife does the work, the husband goes out and works. And I mean, it was fine at that time, I think, but as the time changes, things have to be modified and changed a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's when reality sets in, is like, in reality nothing is going to be equal, but the goal is that both people feel that it's equal, right? And both people are happy with what the situation is.
Let's get into the next one, which is finances.
So finances is a very, very tricky one. My expectation was that we put all our money into one account and we spend it from that one account. That was my expectation, because that's how my parents did it. That's how I've seen other people do it that are in our community. And I was like, yeah, both will be happy with that. Reality is, before I got married, I would just make my own money and I would spend it however much as I liked and wherever I wanted to. I remember one instance where I had a really crappy phone and they just kept dying it out and everything, and someone mentioned like, why don't you make enough money, why don't you just get a new phone? The next day I got a new phone, and it was like an iPhone close to like $2,000, and just spent that. I didn't really talk to anyone about it, and because as financial independence, right? So going into a marriage, when reality sets in, you really can't be making purchases that are substantial on your own if you do have combined finances, right? If you have separate finances, that's a different story. But if you have combined finances, big purchases...
Which is normally the case, right? Like in most marriages would be the combined finances.
You'd be surprised, Roma. You would be surprised. The biggest thing that shocked me was, there's this guy that I worked with, and he would talk about his girlfriend and him, and they've been living together for a while, and they have a house together. Like, they bought a house together, and they were going to eventually get married and everything. And I don't know how the topic came up, but essentially, even when they go to a restaurant, they send each other money for their share of the bill of the restaurant. So, like, let's say like the guy paid, maybe they would do like a split payment. So, like, when you go out with friends, you get 2 bills, each person pays for their own. That's what they would do, is they would pay for their own stuff. Or let's say only one person had the card, the other person would transfer the money afterwards for what they spent.
But is it because they're not married? Maybe because they're a girlfriend-boyfriend thing?
No, because they had a house together, and that's how they were going to continue even after they got married.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
even after they got married, they were gonna... Okay,
yeah, okay. And so the mortgage payment would come out of the guy's account. The girlfriend would pay the guy half of the mortgage every month. And that was wild concept to me. Maybe I have a very skewed perspective on this, but for me it was like, well, why don't you put things in one bank account that you make joint purchases in, and you can still have your own money on the side, but maybe both of you contribute the same amount to one account every month. and that's where you make your household purchases, right? And that way you still have your independence in finances, but you're contributing equally and you're spending on things that you both use, right? So that's the one instance that I see that it's not as common as we think of just combining finances together. But reality is, so now when we moved, when I got married and we combined finances, purchases that we would make, we would have to go through each other. That would be significant purchases, like, you know, if we wanted to get a TV, we wanted to get a sofa, we wanted to get anything like a car maybe, or anything substantial, like we would have a discussion on it. And in the beginning I would be like, why am I having to justify my finances, like what I want to spend my money on, to this person, right? Eventually I got around to the idea, because he also is spending money on things that he wants to spend money on, and he's also running these things by me, and he's not making these decisions blindly, right? It's only fair that I do the same, and we're both on the same page. And you know, sometimes we don't have this conversation on every single thing. Like my husband will want to buy like a cricket bat for himself, and those can get a little pricey, but he doesn't have to run that by me. If he wants to buy a cricket bat, he can buy a cricket bat. Like I can't be bothered with that. If I want to buy like $10, he's not going to be like, why are you buying $10? That can get that expensive. Like, no, he's not. He's really not going to say anything of that sort. But when it comes to significant purchases, like we just bought a TV, we decided together to buy a TV, and we decided together on like how much we were willing to spend on it and what we wanted out of it. So I think that's what my reality has been like. It wasn't completely a shock as housework was, but it still took some getting used to.
No, I'm on similar page as you when it comes to expectations before marriage, because I also thought that it would be like the same account and then you just spend everything from the same account. But I think like what I've heard and what we also practice is that, as you said, like a common account where both people would put in some chunk in there, and then would also have our own savings account. At the end of each month, we normally sit down with our Excel spreadsheet and we just like go through the expenses that happened during the month, budget wise and everything, and how we did it budget wise, is it over, under, etc. And then looking at the savings, like when the salary hits the account, you know, moving some amount in the savings account and then moving some in the common expense account, from which account we expense out everything, that whatever bills you need to pay and mortgage and all these things. So that's normally the reality for us as well. Like after marriage, having that separate savings account, that also really helps for, you know, as you mentioned, things like, oh, you know, like if you want to buy something that's very important for you, as long as it's not a super significant expense, it's okay to do things like that. So usually I think this is like one of the big things, is that in marriages, one of the reasons why people want to get married is to build wealth. When you marry someone, you do become a unit, right? So even with just like housework, finances also become a unit. If you as an individual was earning, you know, 100K per year, now there's another person earning $75,000 per year. So that now makes it a household income of 175 instead of just 100 that you used to have before. So in that case, I think it really depends on the couple's goals as well. Like what is their basis when it comes to finances? Are they on the same page? Are they planning on being a unit and building that wealth later on? Or are they trying to just maintain their own finances and then go forward just based on their own finances, right? Like I think it's really personal preference when it comes to couples or finances. Couples can decide really what works for them. But this is usually what our reality is that we try to combine it into one account and then spend it from there. But before we combine it into one account, we have already put some in the savings account. That's normally how finances and stuff work. And this is one of the main topics that couples usually try to talk about before marriage or around the time they're getting married and stuff. And I think it's a mature thing to do. If you are a unit, if you are trying to do things together, it's not bad to like, you know, run things by your person and, you know, just go like, hey, do you think this is a smart idea to buy this right now? Maybe not so much right now. Maybe we can do this 2 months down the line and then do it budget wise, right? Like when you are younger and, you know, when you are not married, a lot of your purchases revolve revolve around materialistic things like looking pretty or trying to please others and things like that. Once you get married, you really try to narrow down what really works for you as a couple, right? Like you have future goals, you have a child, you might have multiple kids, and you need to tend to their needs and fulfill their wants and everything. And then obviously save for your retirement, right? So there's so many goals that you want to achieve. So you really like tame down on your purchases anyway. And then a lot of your purchases do become common purchases where, you do try to run things by each other and make decisions like that.
Did you talk about finances beforehand for getting married? Because I certainly did not. And I know a lot of couples do not. Like we had like one conversation about it. The gist of it was, yeah, we're going to combine everything in one account and we're going to spend it from that account. And that was the entire conversation. We didn't really talk about our spending habits or like how we're going to manage purchases and things like that. And I know a lot of couples do not, but did you end up doing that?
So we didn't talk about how we are going to manage finances before marriage. We did not as well. But then we ended up sort of like creating a standard afterwards as well. I don't know. We were always on the same page when it came to our values and beliefs and everything. And we both were literally just trying to build a life. Like both of us didn't have a set goal in mind yet. So that helped. I'm sure if we both had like a set goal in mind, then it would have been like, no, shoot, like we should have talked about this before and everything. But because we didn't have a goal or anything in mind yet, it really helped us create a benchmark, create a standard as we were starting off, and then sort of discuss how we want to do this going forward basis.
No, that's good that you came to that, you were able to develop that. And I think that having the same values to begin with, that definitely helps. Yeah, because if you don't have that, I think that can lead things in a very wrong direction.
Yeah, like, having the same values also really helps with the purchase habits, to be honest, because if you think a certain way about a certain purchase, if your values are matching with your partner, if you think that so and so item should not be, there's no need for this item, and if your partner thinks the same way, then it's a lucky, easy thing.
Yeah, and you brought up a really good point, is that you discovered shared goals that you had, because that's what I experienced too, is like we had shared goals. We wanted to buy a house, we wanted to save for our retirement, and and things like that. What I experienced, a lot of my unnecessary spending stopped. I used to spend so much money on makeup, and now like I only spend money on makeup when I need it, when I run out, and I don't spend. I think the only spending that I do just for me for fun is like the books that I purchase, and like obviously dates and going out, that is obviously stuff that we do together, but my own frivolous spending is just limited to books. I think we need a little bit of that, because we don't want to be, we do nothing, we just kind of stay in our house and spend according to the budget, because we need some fun in our lives.
Exactly. Yeah, like as long as you have budgeted that, right? Like then it's okay to spend that. I even know couples do things like, and it's not really my idea, like I've seen it in some couples, and I've also heard about this through some YouTube videos and everything as well, is that there's such thing as a no spend month or low spend month as well, where you mutually decide that, okay, let's like no unnecessary spending this month. So literally like all your fixed expenses only, so from mortgage to grocery and any insurances or anything house related or your phone and utilities and all these things, that's it. No unnecessary expenses otherwise this whole month. So couples do things like that as well. Now in order to actually do that successfully, you gotta be on the same page, right? Like when it comes to your goals and stuff. And I think we both had it sort of similar, is that we got married, we had that goal of, okay, we want to save for a house, and we ended up doing it, right? Like I had a house within a couple of years, you had the same thing after your marriage, right? And so that's how you achieve those goals as well. Like if you are on the same page, if you are being mature enough to like let go of some of the things that were really just your wants at one point when you were younger, and now you recognize that, okay, these were just wants, like I don't have to have them, like I can live without them, and be okay about it, and then move on. There are also couples who live very a very frugal life as well, which really, again, it is really the couple's preference whether they want to go by that or not. You should really talk about things like that, like before marriage, so that you know that the other person is on the same page as you. Not necessarily everyone would prefer a frugal life like that.
Exactly.
A bit of an entertainment, a bit of like going out, or giving out a budget, allocating a budget to eating out or for dates and stuff. Definitely a great idea, as long as you have a budget.
Yeah.
and it's not just a random spending.
Yeah, no, I am definitely on the same page with you there. Definitely helps to have that budget.
Yes. Okay, let's move on to the next topic of love.
For me, when I was younger, my expectation of love was this like fantasy idea of everything is like lovey-dovey, cutesy, we're romantic all the time and just so respectful and going out on dates, them buying flowers for me like all the time, giving me gifts, and we're going on date nights. Like the idea of love was all of these romantic things. And that was my expectation of love. And what I realized, a love in a marriage is so much more than that. So my expectations were met and exceeded in this category. It's like love isn't all those things. Obviously it is all those things for me, but more important than that is the mutual respect we have for each other, the care of, maybe I'm feeling sick one day and he cooks dinner and he does the laundry that day, and I get to just watch TV and just lay on the couch and be pampered for that time. If I don't want to make a certain phone call, he makes the phone call for me. And being supportive of each other, even if they don't agree with you. So that's what love for me is. I have a certain idea of what I'm doing, and maybe he doesn't agree with me, but he still is by my side, supporting me and cheering me on, and we discuss our differences outside of that and how we can move on without it becoming a problem. Like, so love for me is him being there for me in my time of need and just being a partner and someone that I can totally rely on, in conjunction with the expectations of going out on dates, getting flowers. Those are very cute and nice things, but more importantly for me is someone who's a dependable, reliable person who's there for you no matter what.
Yeah, and that sounds like a responsible person, and that's what I think love is as well. It's like, how a caterpillar turns into a butterfly. Just like that, you have love. Okay, before marriage and everything, if you're in a relationship and all that, it's love. But then after a certain point, it converts into responsibility of that person. So I really see that as like love as well. Obviously, the person is being there for you when in the time of your need. But essentially, bottom line is that they are willing to take the responsibility of whatever it is that you need, that they would be there for, and that they would pick up the slack, right, whenever needed, sort of thing. And yeah, it was the same thing for me as well, is that before marriage, it was a lot of fairy tales of like what love would look like. Very unrealistic expectations, like it's like he would just bring in things that you are thinking about, or whatever you think is right in the situation, that he would actually end up doing it. These are all like very much fairy tale. Growing up with Bollywood movies, things like that really just get embedded in you, and you grow up with expectations such as that. But that's not really reality, because for one thing, a person cannot really read somebody else's mind. It's just pure luck when someone would end up doing something that you were expecting out of them. It's rare and it's just lucky, but it may not be the case every time, which is why you have communication, right? And that's why everyone says communication is the key. Love for me is also the person being there with you whenever it's needed, taking the responsibility, and also respecting you even when there is a conflict happening. And obviously I would be doing the same thing as well. Has to be both ways. Otherwise it doesn't really work. And honestly, like before marriage, there's not a lot that happens in life. It is really just dates and flowers and all the fun stuff and everything. But really after marriage, a whole bunch of other things start happening. Like you actually have a new set of family that literally legally becomes your parents, right? Like it's literally in-laws. So there's that, and then there's a whole bunch of other things, including, your goals in life that you're trying to achieve. Someone's career going a certain way, or it's not going a certain way, or someone trying to have kids and it's not happening, and a whole bunch of other problems, right? Like, it just happens to be that usually after marriage, people face a lot of issues as well going forward. So as long as you are like, there for each other, being respectful with each other, giving space, not giving space, whatever is the preference of your partner, all of those things actually matter. Sticking together even in the time of conflict, that matters as well. Trying to resolve it. So that really becomes the definition. I truly think that love has a different meaning before marriage, and it could have a different meaning after marriage, and it may even fade out after marriage if you would let it, right? So there has to be a constant effort that you have to put in order to keep it fresh, or in order to just keep polishing it. It's just practical things. These are some practical things.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. And one thing I forgot to mention that was like really important expectation for me was attraction. As a physical attraction, I was like, this is like a must-have. That's an expectation that I want. And obviously when I got married, I was obviously very attracted to my husband. But even if he becomes 50 pounds overweight, loses all of his hair, that attraction isn't gonna go anywhere, because the physical attraction isn't what's important to me. It is me attracted to the person, how they are and how they behave. Like, that's way more important than that physical piece.
It is the personality as well, right? Like, you look at that as well, and that's what carries it forward.
Yeah, exactly. Because we'll get old, and if you fell in love with me because I'm pretty and beautiful and whatever, and when I get old and I have kids and I get overweight, and you're not gonna love me anymore, that's just unrealistic expectations to have, because looks change. You can't help it because of how the human body is. It is slowly dying every day, and it matters if the person is able to see past your looks.
And, I think it's just natural. I think it's, in my opinion, it's very beautiful to have gray hair, or some people get white hair and get wrinkles on your face and everything. I think it's a sign of experience in life, and not a lot of people die young. So if you are lucky enough to have gray hair and creases on your face, then consider yourself to be lucky enough to have experienced life. So I've always seen signs of aging as impressive. So like, this looks and everything of course matters, but after a certain point you start developing understanding towards each other. You start to understand and appreciate the personality of each other, and you get okay about the fact that, okay, you know what, like, looks isn't, like, that's not everything. That's not what you want to go for. It's not sustainable. It's not long term. It is only going to end up making you sad if that's the only thing that you're basing things on. And again, it goes both ways. I always emphasize this. It goes both ways. It's not just for one gender. Like, it's for both partners to put in the effort and to appreciate the other person for the way they are looking as they are aging and everything. So
very good thoughts on that. Should we move on to the next one?
Yes, conflicts. So before marriage, you don't really have a concept of conflicts, because you don't really go in a relationship with the mentality of conflicts or anything, and whatever things you think you might have conflicts about, you tend to usually talk about it before marriage. As we did, we talked about the stuff that were important for us, that we stuff we wanted from life, from marriage, things like that we had already talked about, to make sure that we were on the same page and everything. But conflicts usually tend to occur when you are in the process, when you are practicing the marriage and actually living with the person, and you are living with their daily habits and their daily lives and everything. That's when you start having conflict. And for us, after marriage, for the first couple of years, we didn't really have a lot of conflicts. We were fine just living with each other. If there were like any situations where we did not really like anything about each other, we did talk about this afterwards as well, is that we were very slow in fights. So one person would pick out a topic saying that, I have so and so as a problem, or like this is not really working and things like that. And like I would come up with an argument, like, I would take my time to think about an argument and then come back with it. It was like that slow for us to actually even fight. So it wasn't really even fight, thankfully, afterwards. But that was like, a couple of years into the marriage and everything. But now after around 5 years now, if we actually have conflicts where we have, lived with each other for a while now, and after knowing each other's habits and everything, if we do have conflicts, the way we resolve it is, first of all, when there is conflict, when the conflict is starting, if one person is angry, then the other person naturally just tends to get quieter, just to make it easier. And we both really like space in terms of fights and everything. So if we are actually getting into an argument or getting into a fight, we would try to give each other space. And once we are like ready to actually talk about it, my husband would be the one to start the conversation, and we would talk about it, and we would try to give each other logical reasonings, and then like what was the problem. Like we would actually communicate it in terms of like feeling wise, like what feelings were hurt and why, and how things were different today, what changed and why things happened the way it happened. We would give each other time and space to actually implement that change later on. Like if we wanted something changed in that person, we would give them time to actually change that quality in them. But I can't sleep at night without actually talking about it. If we do end up fighting towards the end of the night, then we would have to talk about it. Otherwise, it's very difficult for me to actually fall asleep. So that's one thing that normally happens, and I think it's a very natural thing to have conflicts in marriages. A lot of people, especially younger population, I think based on what I've seen, is they tend to think that, hey, if there's conflict, then this is probably not working out. If there is a conflict, then this is probably not a true love or true relationship or anything like that. But that's usually not how it works. I think conflicts or disagreements are healthy, in my opinion, to have that as well. And then the important thing is how you actually resolve them, and were you actually able to resolve them. Yeah, that's where I stand. And another thing I should add is that I don't like loud noises, or if someone yells at me or something, I don't really like that. I mentally cannot really take it. So I think that's how I've been raised as well. Like I've never really had any scolds or yells from my father. He's also a very calm person, so I've never really had that from him. So like right now, my husband, he knows that I can't really take yells or anything. So that's one thing, that if that does happen, then that has to be tamed down, or he knows what would actually hurt me to not do that, right? So just communicating about these things beforehand, that really helps. I think the easiest thing is to judge whether the person that you are trying to build a marriage with, are they respectful even when you guys are fighting? This is one thing I've seen a lot on the internet, on Instagram and TikTok and stuff. I'm sure you have seen it as well, is that whether you're fighting, like that's the basis. Respect is the basis of any relationship. Whether you're fighting or angry or whatever is the situation, you must be respectful no matter what's going on. So I wanna know your
conflict. So before marriage, I was like, "What's conflict? We don't have conflict. What are you talking about? We're never gonna fight." Unrealistic, for sure. I think the first year for us, actually, we had a lot more conflicts than you guys did, and then we do now. Essentially, I think the first year is when we really figured each other out and resolved a lot of conflicts that came about later. Right. How I deal with conflict is head on. I don't like something, I'm going to bring it up and we're going to talk about it right away. What my husband likes to do is not talk to me during that time. I think in the beginning he would try to talk it out, and then he realizes that she's just too far gone to be reasoned with. And then he'd be like, "I'll talk to you later." I'm gonna out myself a little bit. I kept bringing up like the same issue over and over again, even though he's apologized and said, "Yeah, I was wrong." I would still keep bringing it up. It's a bad habit. because I'm like, there's no solution here. We have a conflict. You've realized you made a mistake or you were wrong in that situation. You've apologized for it. But what next? I'm missing that piece of what is next and what's the solution for a future, right? Eventually, we figured out that's what I needed from a conflict is a solution at the end of the day, more than him saying he's apologized for it. Yeah. More than that, I needed a solution for it. I'm very solution oriented in conflict, and we figured that out. It's been working so far, but obviously I like to resolve things as soon as they come up. You said, do you need space for it? I'm the person that does not give space. I'm like, no, you can't have space. You can't take your time. We need this resolved now. We are not going to bed or moving on with our lives before we have this resolved. Because I can't live with the fact that we're fighting. Because I don't like fighting and I don't like conflicts. So that's why I want it resolved like right away, as soon as possible. Make it better, move on. Right? But he's not the same way. He needs time to think about things as well, and I need to give it time. If that means that we don't speak for a little bit, for him to process things and think about it. Because in my mind, in my head, I would always think, he's not thinking about it. Now we're not talking about it. It's left his mind. Which is not fair on me, because that doesn't give him the benefit of the doubt that he's processing this through a different lens than I am. So we figured that out, and now I tell him what is bothering me and why I don't like what he did or how he handled the situation, and then I give him time to get back to me. If he doesn't get back to me in quick enough time, as in like in a day or so, I'm still like, come on, chop. I've been waiting. And then at one point we would handle conflict. He would say, I would get mad about something, and he would get mad at me about getting mad, because he'd be like, this is not something you need to get mad about. So then he would get mad at me, and I'm like, you cannot be mad at me. So that's a good thing that you guys established, like the other person remains calm, because I'm like, why am I apologizing for being mad here? So figured out some things, but we still have some things to work through. Obviously, I'm a little bit more hot-headed than you are, Roma. In conflicts, and we're still figuring things out, but luckily we don't have as many conflicts as we did before, because pretty much we're on the same perspective on almost all things.
Right. And like as Justin mentioned, you really don't want to go to sleep while you're fighting. That's something that I think should be resolved before you go to sleep. I was looking up Harvard study from back in 2023, December 21st, 2023 was published, and they have 4 steps on how to apologize.
Okay.
Yeah, so the step 1 is acknowledge the offense, so taking the responsibility. Second step is explain what happened. Third step is express remorse. And then the 4th step is offer to make amends. This is what they're saying is like a 4-step process of how to apologize when there is conflict and everything happening. I think this is a great strategy or steps that they have come up with on how to do things. Speaking realistically, I mean, when you are in the middle of a conflict, things like these don't really come to your mind at that time, and so then you would want to like take a pause and try to understand. Part of my like giving it space and everything is also because I also need space, and I like to understand what happened and everything, because if the other person, like if my husband doesn't feel that his side of issue was also heard and that also was taken seriously, and if he's the one who would always have to, you know, say sorry or something like that, then it's not a very sustainable way. So I don't know, I always try to like understand people a lot, like in so maybe maybe that's why it's still tough, right? Trying to like
Yeah.
wait for a resolution, and that whole space thing, that's also tough. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing, right? Is that when you are together as a unit again, you have to take both people seriously, and both have to learn how to apologize and take the responsibility as well, whoever's
Yeah.
fault it is.
Yeah, exactly. And I would really encourage people to not think of it as winning or losing, because a lot of the situations where we handle conflict is, I want to win this conflict, so we try our best to do whatever we can. If we're getting blamed, to not take accountability for it, and if we're the person blaming someone, to not hear the other person out for what's happening. So I would really encourage to not be in the state of losing or winning a conflict. It's all about a resolution and how you can move forward together rather than winning an argument.
It's not you versus him, it's you both versus the problem. This is also a very popular phrase that I've heard from somewhere, so not mine, but that's normally how it is. I think that's the right attitude to look at, is that it's you both together versus the problem.
Yeah. All right, Rama, moving on to family interactions in a marriage. What were some of your expectations before you got married?
I think my expectations before were probably that it's gonna be in-laws, so you just try to, like, I don't know, like, I don't think I really had any, honestly, I don't think I had any expectations when it came to like family interactions or like in-laws or anything like that. The only thing I would say is like respecting them. That was the only thing I knew, but I don't think I actually put myself in the shoes and try to evaluate how it should be like. But after marriage, what normally has happened is that you are the wall between your husband and your parents or your family, and then he's the wall in between you and his parents. And by wall, I mean like a see-through wall.
Like a door.
Not like a wall. Yeah,
Or a window.
sort of like. Or a window. Something that has a filtering ability, basically. I think that's very important to have that. Honestly, it has to be both things, okay? I know usually the expectations is that the guy is the only one who does that. Like, the guy is the only one who stands up for the wife against the parents and all of that. I think, in my opinion, it should be both ways, to try to balance it out. If there is a conflict starting to happen, or between, say, your partner and your parents, then you have to be that filter and try to explain the communication to them in their own languages, because you have grown up with your parents, so you know them very well. And you know your partner, which is why you decided to marry them, because you know them well. You know how both parties work, and if their communication style is not the same, then you have to be the filter in between and try to explain both sides to each other, and try to be that middle person, that liaison basically between the two parties, and try to convey the messages and develop a communication in such a way that both parties still end up liking each other afterwards, after years. As well. And then same thing applies to the husband with, me and his parents, right? He has to be that filter in between, so that insults are stopped, and if there's a stand that needs to be taken for either party, then he knows that he needs to do that. That is, like, honestly the main thing. Thankfully, we are practicing that, like, it's working for us as well. So that's normally how I would do it. But what I've seen in other people is much worse than that. Like, a lot of times it's only the girl, standing up for the husband against the parents, but it does not happen the other way around, because the guy would just not want to speak against his parents, because he would feel like he's behaving badly with them, or being a bad son, or I don't know, whatever the stupid ass reasons are. Honestly, it's not practical. It shouldn't be like that. But I've seen that in a lot of cases. It's not very different. This is one area that's not different now than compared to even 30-40 years ago. I think this is one area that I've seen consistently being the same. So I don't know what you have seen. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I've seen pretty much the same thing. So my expectations before I got married was very like, I'm going to treat them same as my parents, and that's just going to work beautifully. Like, I treat my parents with respect, and, they understand me. Great. We have a great relationship, and just going to be the same way with my in-laws. Oh boy, was I ever wrong. Like, that is just not the same. It is, because honestly, like, your in-laws are different people than your parents are.
Yes.
So that's one thing. As I mentioned, I'm a super blunt person when it comes to like anything that I have an issue with. If I have an issue, I'll say it to you directly, whether you like it or not, and I'll ask you to change that behavior, and I'll give my reasoning for it. Like, this is why, and I think you're doing this wrong. This is why. This is how it's negatively impacting me. And I'll say that to my parents. And then they'd be like, okay, fine, whatever. If they are listening to me, they'll change. But if they're not, they'll just ignore me. Which is fine. They can do whatever they want. It is their life. And then I choose how I'm involved in their life, depending on their reaction, right? With my in-laws, it's a completely different story. They're not used to that. They're more sensitive, I would say. I think I made the mistake once of being super blunt about the fact that I didn't like how things were going about in a situation and how they acted. And I mentioned that, and they were so offended that I said anything to them. They felt disrespected, to be honest. They felt like I disrespected them by voicing my opinions. And we figured out in that situation, from that experience, that it does need to be filtered through my husband and how he interacts with them. So if I have an issue, I will let my husband know, and he will deal with his parents and discuss with them what to do on that situation, because obviously he's lived with them his entire life and he knows them very well, so he knows what works and what doesn't work. So we've adopted that, but we've had to learn that from mistakes instead of developing that from the onset, because I was very naive in thinking that they're gonna be just like my parents, and they're not just like my parents, which is not bad or good. It's
it's just different people. Right.
Yeah. With my parents, I always took the initiative, be like, yes, I'm gonna take my husband's side because that's my partner, and my parents now come second, and their opinions come second, because my partner is a person that I'm spending my entire life with, right? And we've figured out our values and issues, and we're on the same page from the get-go. With your parents, you don't necessarily have that. You just live with however they are, but with your partner, you can really come together and start as a unit. With your parents, you cannot, right? So I've decided from very early on, is my partner and we will decide what's good for us, and if my parents disagree or they don't like something that my husband does, that's a filter that I've put in so that I handle it and I take care of any issues come about, and I make sure that does never go to my husband, and he never has to put up with anything that he's not comfortable with. And he's done the same for me, but he didn't start out doing the same. Because in Indian families, it's much more like, oh, the woman is married and she becomes part of the guy's family. In our society, it's not like you're creating a new family together. It's you become part of it. Like, so you're the odd person out in that family. And you always feel like you're constantly trying to be, how do I change myself to fit in here? It's just now that we figured out that, that is not our situation. It is not that way for us. We built our own family, and we decide what works for us.
This perspective that you brought up, I didn't even think about it from this lens, but yeah, you're right. Like with parents, it's so much easier. If I had anything, that I wanted to say to my parents, I wouldn't have to think twice. I would just say it to them. But when it comes to my in-laws, because of the language being different, like the way I communicate is much different than the way they communicate. So I speak very softly, and I try to be respectful and everything. That's just the way I was raised. So I do that. But on their side, they are very joking and a bit loud, and so I don't
joking. Don't even get me started on the jokes. I because sometimes they make jokes and I'm like, I don't know if you're serious. I do not know if you're serious. Because if this is a joke, great, fine. But if this is not a joke, I'm offended.
Exactly. It's so different. And the things that they say in a offensive way, I find them funny. Like, I don't know, like it's opposite. Like the way we communicate is really just opposite. So that's why I think when my in-laws were here back in the day, there would be a couple of instances when you would want to, when you didn't like something or you were offended, right? So in that case, I remember I actually just took it upon myself and I brought this up to my mother-in-law and I just talked with her nicely, and she heard the whole thing and she's like, okay, yeah, like, like I heard it and everything, and then it was just like a normal communication at that time. But if it's something very serious, like that thing was not that big, and I had my husband sitting with me and everything as well, so because otherwise it would be so hard for me to actually talk about this, given I hate confrontations as well. I would just like brush it off, but you also have to see yourself in the mirror afterwards, so you can't really just brush things off anymore in life. But if it's something very serious, then I wouldn't even try, like, because I would just end up crying, or I would end up yelling, or I would get very angry and everything. So yeah, like then there has to be a filter, which is your husband in that case, right? You would just tell the husband that, okay, this is something that's happening. And I think it happens the other way around as well. In-laws would also try to do that like they would try to say something. And honestly, it's at this point, like, it's not about just accepting someone the way they are and everything. These things are just not that practical. Like, they are not your parents, and you are not their child, right? So there is not that direct sense of like, oh, forgiving everything. There's no blood bond. There's no blood relationship. So it doesn't come naturally to you to just let go and forgive things, because you really just start to take a stand of like maintaining your own dignity and your own self-respect. And I think it goes the same for them as well, is that they also start to have that a bit of like that distance of like, oh, your daughter-in-law saying something and all that. So it has to be a filter there, is what I would say. And it works for us, and I hear it works for you guys. So
yeah, it's working so far. With people living together, I think there's always going to be conflicts no matter what. Because not everyone is the same way. Handling those conflicts early on can help, and eventually you hope that you get used to everything. So I think that's everything for today's topic. Obviously, if you want to hear more, we can certainly do a part 2, and you can email us anything that we missed talking about today. You can email us at cardamomchaipodcast@gmail.com. So Roma, before we wrap up for the week, can you tell everyone what you're loving this week?
Yes, I am so much into my planner for 2025. So I usually start around like October and I go until December. In these 2 months, I usually try to sit down, look at next year, starting from all the birthdays to what goals I have, what I want to do, like major things that I want to achieve and all that. I'd work on my vision board and everything. And usually around December, I am more focused on the planner for next year in terms of holidays or birthdays, and how I want to distribute all the weekends in a balanced way, so that we don't have 6 months of like no interaction, no social interaction, and 6 months of all the social interaction. So I try to do that. So I'm just so occupied with my 2025 planner these days. So I've been enjoying it. I've been loving it. It's the favorite part of my year, honestly, because I enjoy planning so much. It calms me down a lot. I love looking at the future, fantasizing about the future, and then just being happy about it, getting my husband all excited and happy about it.
Nice.
And then like figuring out dates and stuff, and I would like hand him over with like, okay, you figure out the month of like so and so in terms of dates and what we are doing each weekend and things like that. So I mean, it's nice. It's nice, and I'm loving it.
Do you do that like on like a physical planner or like on a digital one?
I do a combination. Okay. So the planner itself is physical. Planner, that would be like daily basis sort of thing, right? And it's usually like 1 page per day sort of thing, or like it would have like half a page of both days on it and everything. But then when it comes to like my monthly stuff, I try to look at it on like on my like laptop's computer or my laptop's calendar to see what's happening on monthly basis. I yet have to find a planner that gives me a visual of monthly, daily, by time, by activity. Like my brain it gets very complicated when it comes to like planning things out. I have so many like exact things I want, but I'm not getting it technically. So that's why I have to do a combination of both
Okay.
together. So
If I see a planner that is good, I'll send it your way.
let me know. Yes,
Yeah.
please do.
Yeah, that's
How about yourself?
I'm loving fuzzy slippers.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I got a pair from Indigo last year for Christmas. These are like very, very fuzzy slippers, and they're so cute. So I actually bought a present for someone. Like I bought them like a couple of nice things, and then I was gonna throw in the fuzzy slippers as well. But then I was like, I saw them, I was like, no, I'm keeping them for myself. This was meant for someone else, but I ended up keeping it. And I wear them every single winter, and they're just so nice and comfy on my feet, but they're so cute and comfy and keep me cozy.
Aw. Yeah, it's the best part about winter, just now. Well, anyways, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. This was our episode for today. We hope you had fun listening to us as much as we enjoyed talking about it. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at Cardamom Chai Podcast at gmail.com or follow us on Instagram.
I'll have the details for everything in the episode details, so you can check it out. And you can find all of our episodes so far on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube. So make sure to follow along on our journey here and stay up to date. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, stay warm, everyone. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.